And we're back. So in this episode, I'm gonna just kind of go through how you can take existing techniques you use and just make them better. Not reinvent the wheel, make them better, right? So in Warrior Flow, we don't have a bunch of terms for different techniques. And we have some terms, we have even some cool stuff, because there's something to be said for, having some cool terms and, being all kung fu-y and stuff. But when we're talking about techniques, right, so we don't say, okay, this is, outward, middle block, catch the hand technique or whatever. We don't get into that. And the reason is because combat is fluid and ever changing. So we go back in history almost 2,500 years ago to Sun Tzu, The Art of War, right? And he talks about, armies are like water. Combat is fluid and ever changing. He talks about this stuff. Musashi talked about this stuff all the time, about the fluid nature of battle, and yet when we get to the 21st century, we act like none of this stuff still exists, when in fact, no. And this is the reason why the US military spends, billions and trillions of dollars on capabilities, whereas we can just pretty much be wherever we want to be when we got to be there. So the concept hasn't changed, it's just we got better means of, being like water. So you hear this stuff in the martial arts all the time, you want to be like water. So one of the things that's missing from people being like water is literally trying to practice with your body being like water. So in the episode of Lessons from My Masters, where I talk about how my masters use the different states in their body, I'm going to talk about the water state. When I'm changing the attitude of my body, when I'm playing off of his motion, as I'm manipulating the space between us, it's not just that I'm manipulating this space as he gets closer. So we get that uncomfortable man distance, and notice there's no eye contact, right? I'm also gonna create space, even though we're in almost direct contact. And the reason is, I don't wanna give the enemy, once I'm in on them, space to move. So this is where, when people say, in the reality-based self-defense realm, that, a grappling doesn't work in a real street fight. Well, that's not true. The reason a lot of grappling does not work if you go to the ground is because you got to take those people out. You can't play games. You can't tap out some guy who's been smoking funny looking cigarettes and is feeling no pain because, he's like already like, 3 sheets to the wind, and like he's, maybe a couple puffs away from like an overdose. Okay, it just doesn't work. But what it is we just don't become decisively engaged. So if I'm in here, I'm still feeling this. Now, we're going to use this as an example. Let's turn this way so you can see. I can feel pressure here, but he's not necessarily pushing, but I can feel him trying to catch this. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to roll my shoulder back to create the space I need. And then I'm going to grab his arm and hit him so freaking hard, that I'm going to give him some kind of freaking, problems with his jaw and his teeth. The reason I grab his arm is because I don't want him to do the same thing I just did. In other words, if I can get like this, so can he. So I don't want him to do that. I'm just going to start wailing, nothing fancy, just pile drive your skull right into the ground. And so as I get close, if I want to bring this arm around to hit, what I'm going to do is turn my body. Now it's already moving my hand to position. Now as I bring it over top, I'm going to rotate back toward him. From here to here now, because I'm doing this within motion. What's going on is I'm also now tracking his movement within motion. And because I have all this play in my arm, it's kind of like a heat-seeking missile where I can make adjustments on the way in. Now, people who say you can't do this, the crowd who, I know my friend, the crowd who says real fights are at the gross anatomy level is because they don't train their bodies to do these things because they have the wrong modality of training to do it. It's just that simple. How do I know this? How in the heck, and you can go to any high school, heck, even Little League parks in summer rec league, and watch little kids playing basketball and soccer, and they're doing things with their body, running at full speed, controlling a ball. At full speed. Don't tell me people can't do this. People running with a football at full speed, making moves and adjustments that make no sense. And in football, I'll use football as an example, people are also tracking that movement and making tackles. How is that possible? It's because it's a human ability, because humans can do this. And when you start moving away from how the universe works, that's when you mess yourself up. When you create false assumptions of how movement works, then you mess yourself up. Just because, Mumbles and Blockhead, who've been fighting on the streets all their life, fight like this, right? Just because they fight like that. No, maybe they just don't know how to move their body right. Doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best way to move. On the other side, because I always hear people say, well, how do you deal with somebody throwing haymakers? And I always ask the question, well, what if I start throwing haymakers back? I mean, if it works the way you think it works, and it's such a difficult thing, why can't I do it? My point is, we're human beings. We all, on the most fundamental level, move relatively within the same range of motion, right? And then, of course, there's something to be said for talent. I'm sorry, if somebody's bigger, stronger, or faster than you got to figure something out. And that's what Warrior Flow is all about. It's about figuring something else out, because the time to figure out in the body, and this is key, what you need to do is not when you're in the fight of your life. That's why you train. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So as I'm moving, what's going on here is I feel how his body's moving. Now what he did was he shifted his body because he can feel me trying to control his arm. As he continues, there's the elbow, oh no, nighty-night, right? He's playing off my movement. So I gotta recognize he's playing off my movement. But what he's doing also is, as we're in relatively direct contact, he's staying close enough to me, just like Bruce Lee said, water always takes the shape of the object that it's poured into. He's taking on the shape his body needs to not give me the space I need to function, to work, to do whatever I want to do. So this is why when I do this demonstration with people who've never experienced what it feels like when I'm like water, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for people, because as you can feel, it literally feels like my body is like water. Because I put that idea in my mind, I said, well, how would water be? Well, water, it's not just slapping around, it's graceful. It engulfs. And so I create that because as I'm doing this, the only way to do it is within my body, internally. I have to be also internally shifting my body, manipulating the space, even internally within my body, to create the space I need to be able to make things work. So in the next video, I'm going to get into how you can kind of practice this a little bit. I'll probably make this all one video. I don't know, I'll see what I got to do. But what I want you to get is the understanding that this is a skill that you can practice. I do these skills in some of our training programs where I teach people how to do this stuff. But these are skills you can practice right now by developing your body, so that if your technique is I'm going to block and then throw a strike, now instead of doing this from here, I step in with that and do the same thing. Or I step in, catch the arm, and then hold the arm so they don't hit you, and then you just wail on them, and again, you send them on to see their ancestors.